Welcome to Everything's Relative. It's a podcast. We talk about fucked up surprises that happen when people do DNA tests. I'm Eve Sturgis. I'm the host. I'm sitting here in the evening. My husband, Kaylan Egan, is next to me. He helps produce the show, but right now he's playing Words with Friends. So if you hear any distant curse words or other expressions of anger, that's him. He takes his vocabulary seriously. Anyway, back to our episode. I know I have talked about this before and how sometimes my best interviews happen when I am the least prepared. And or what I mean to say is, like, I enjoy them. I enjoy the interviews that happen at the very last minute. And that is exactly what happened with Fred, today's interview. Right when he got in touch with me, I had an interview spot open up. So we jumped on a call together really soon after first connecting, which is unusual because usually what normally happens is people email me and then I put them on a list and then I email them a list of dates and we go back and forth to figure something out. And somewhere in there, they may send me their whole story. And then I probably will have to reschedule. And when we finally get to talking, which is wonderful, but there is a different kind of magic that happens when I can jump on with somebody without knowing anything about them. So that's exactly what happened with Fred. He reached out and was like, I have a story. And I was like, how about right now? And he was like, yeah. And then there we were, knee deep in his DNA discovery. So that's what we have today. Come along with me and Fred hanging out on a Saturday morning. It was Saturday morning for me. It was afternoon for him. It's all good. I'll see you in a little bit. Thanks.
I was looking at your podcast last night. And sort of like looking through it and trying to listen to stuff and just trying to understand it. And I was like, I think this is about Psych, the show.
Yes, it is. That's the whole essence of it.
Which was so fun. It was like, if it was, I'm sure, especially for Psych fans, that's really fun. But you guys sound like you're having a really good time on there.
Yeah, we're all really introverted. So that's pretty much as we, get excited about anything.
I think that's cool. I think it's so cool that podcasting, I mean, there's like lots of different mediums, but podcasting offers, like, for example, introverts an opportunity to get together and talk about stuff with a wider group of people. I think that's
yeah.
I think that's neat.
Yep.
You did it for 8 years or something.
8 seasons, and we did it afterwards. So we had some breaks in there, but it took us probably a couple years to do 100 episodes.
Yeah.
100 and something. And then they came out with a movie pretty much immediately after we were done, which was very convenient.
Mm-hmm. Thanks,
so
guys.
we got the band back together after a couple months, and then another movie came out when they came out with the Peacock service.
Sure. Okay. So that's where I was sort of looking at things that were like reflecting on previous episodes, and then it mentioned the Peacock service and.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. Like
so have you ever heard of the podcast Oh No, Ross and Carrie?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's
well, maybe, but no.
It's a little different. It's like a skeptic investigating kind of podcast. They go into like I don't want to say cults, but they go into like a lot of fringe religious groups. They look at like fringe science stuff, like flat Earth and does this holistic remedy work? Like
sure.
they'll chug holistic medicine, kind of thing.
Right.
So I tricked Ross into joining us for a couple of episodes.
Awesome.
Because we did one on UFOs and one about a cult.
Okay, well, perfect. That sounds right up their alley.
So that's good for podcasting too. You can just call any rando and say, "Hey, you want to be on my podcast?"
Yeah. I was actually just talking to some people about that, encouraging them to contact podcasts and just ask. You might as well just ask.
Yeah.
Never hurts to ask. Well, this is so cool because, it's so cool because you have a story and we're going to talk about it. But one of the things I really like about this particular experience is that you just contacted me a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And so it just happened to work out that I had a spot and you were available. And sometimes I like it better that way because then I don't know what to expect.
Okay.
Sometimes people send me long versions of their story and then it takes a few weeks or months or, whatever happens, it just takes a long time. And by then there's a different kind of energy. So I really like that. I almost am going in totally blind with you. You did send me a chart last night and some fun. Okay. I'm going to confess to you and I'm going to confess to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I have a really hard time with like data.
Ah,
So,
I'm finding this a lot.
uh,
Because even like the people who are helping me, I start talking like centimorgans and this, and they're
uh-huh.
like, no, we do family trees. We don't do
Right.
centimorgans.
Oh no, really? Oh, how funny. Okay, well, see, I'm not even pretending to try and do people's family trees, but so I looked at your chart. So I looked at your graph that you sent me
Mm-hmm.
or spreadsheet. I don't
Yeah, it's spreadsheet.
and I actually was looking at it right before when we were trying to connect. Um so I admire its color coded stuff and I sort of was following it, but I didn't quite understand it, which is great because you're going to tell me this because you're going to tell me the story anyway.
Yeah, well,
Um,
this was really just like me, like I can't pretend I did get a math degree. I can't pretend that I really did advanced math, like compared to some of my peers, but I guess it was just a way for me to like get it on paper somehow, like
Totally. Well, I
what I
mean,
was seeing.
I think it's totally common. I think, I mean, and lots of people that contact me send me their own versions of maps and data and
Yeah.
charts and things. Like I really understand that. Like the need to put it down on paper to understand what just happened.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So yeah. So I wasn't I'm not turned off by them. I'm actually excited when people send me that stuff. I love that and I know that if I put them up on social media with people's permission, that other people look at them and know what they're seeing. But
Right. Well,
sometimes
like I had this whole argument. We'll talk about my
Mhm.
my search angel a bit, but I had this whole argument going with her at one point because I have like what people call like a half uncle, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
My great grandfather had two wives. He has children in Hungary and then children that ended up in France, right? So I had this whole argument with her, like, no, the numbers aren't right. I can't be this person's cousin or whatever. He can't be my birth father because the numbers aren't right.
Yeah. Oh,
And
so
she's
like
like, oh, but you kind of look alike. I'm like, no,
oh,
it's.
yeah.
And then I had another guy I'll tell you about it who's done genetics, and he backed me up, and I was
Yeah.
like, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you just pulled the curtain back on the fact that so much of this like community and industry and not industry, but like the world of the DNA family tree stuff is done by people with different backgrounds and different experiences and
Oh
different
yeah,
understanding of it. So there's data people, and then there's family tree people, and there's records people, and then there's the people that are like, but you look like him. So,
yeah, right.
so
And I
you
hate to say it, but this guy is kind of older, and his picture looked a little sad. So then I had to poke fun at her, like, "Oh yeah, I look like that. Okay,
yeah, yeah. Thanks a lot.
thanks a lot.
Thanks a
Let
lot.
me show
Yeah.
you what you look like."
Yeah. Let me just pull up some pictures of some old sad people for you. Hilarious. All right. So tell me, how do you like to start your story? Tell me what's going on. It's still fresh. You're a baby, NPE.
Yeah, it's going to be, depending on your lead time, it's going to be a
Hmm.
year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was thinking I could just go chronological because I was half joking about having 7 pages. I do have 7 pages,
Yeah.
but it's chronological so I don't forget stuff.
Uh-huh.
And that's probably the way to go. And I do have a cousin to throw in there too.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool. We love extra relatives that are appearing all the time. So
Yes.
when you least expect it. So yeah, go dive in. I'm here. I'm all ears. I'm listening. I'm excited.
Okay. All right. So I was born in 1966, but I'll start with my cousin who was born in 1964. She was given up for adoption,
Okay. I read
and
about you wrote about her last night in the email. Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
and we never heard of her ever, right? My dad was in the army. His sister had a baby. She went to the Catholic adoption services, and the baby went away.
Did your dad know about this at all?
No, no.
Wow.
My
So he was
my
gone and
grandmother may have known, but not my dad. And when I refer to my dad, he is the dad I grew up with, my
Mhm,
what we call birth certificate father,
mhm, mhm.
right?
BCF. I'm with you.
Yes, right. So this happened. We had no knowledge, and then I came along. Now the story I knew was I was born in Montreal. My mom is from Montreal. My dad is from like the Philadelphia area. They met on vacation, and the way I thought it went was they met on vacation in Atlantic City from their separate homes.
Hmm.
And I thought I came along from that meeting. I had the timeline completely wrong.
Oh.
So what actually happened was they met and 2 years later, um, I came along.
Oh, you were 2 years off your whole life?
Yes.
Your narrative was 2 years off. Okay.
Yeah. So it was kind of weird that way. I don't know why you're in a tiny window now, but I'm just
Oh,
going to live with it. Um, so yeah, so I knew that I was born premature, that my parents weren't married before I was born, and they got married 9 days later, which coincided with my mother's birthday. And I think the plan was to get married on my mother's birthday, and then I would be born.
oh, right. Okay.
So, I mean, granted, the timing was still a little soon, but it was understood that my BCF was my father, and he took the full brunt of that, and life went on, right? He took on medical bills. He, started a family with my mom. I had two sisters after that.
I'm gonna reject that. Okay.
uh, I had two sisters after that. One 18 months younger, and the other one is 4.5 years younger. So
Okay.
she was kind of like the younger sister to both of us. We kind of remember her being young.
Right.
So yeah, we were in Canada until I was about 13, and then my dad had an opportunity to move south to New Jersey, kind of like where he was from. So then we got to know his family a little better.
And how was their marriage?
It was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's perfect, but it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so at that point, we spent like basically the rest of my life in the United States. My parents did end up going back to Canada to take care of my grandmother for a while, so they spent extra time there. But I was going back like less and less. I had less and less contact with Canadian relatives, and even the ones in New Jersey we weren't super close to. So when we all moved away from there eventually, it basically took Facebook to bring us all back together, Um, so that was kind of like my life. I spent my senior year apart from my parents. There's a little story there because the couple who took care of me my senior year, they were like my high school mentors. And apparently my father shared some of this story with the man who took care of me in 1983. And I just found out like
Huh.
maybe 2 months ago. I called this guy up and I said, I need to tell you something about
Yeah.
my background. He's like, oh yeah, your dad told me, and I don't know why he told me, but I thought you already knew.
Oh.
So this was 1983.
Okay. Huh. I think you just dropped an Easter egg. I think that's what that's called. Like, or maybe a spoiler, but your dad knew. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Right. So life went on. I went to college, got married. DNA tests came into our lives. I think in let's see, I've got it written right here in my extensive notes. 2018, my dad got a test because my sister got it in her head that she wanted to find out if the family was Jewish based on our last name, always kind of sounding Jewish. Um, Now, religiously speaking, she also had reasons, like we always kind of like had a connection to like the Christian Jewish thing. So she was curious. So my dad got tested, and pretty much immediately we found out that was not the case. But then my sister, being a completist, she said everybody's going to get tested. So my mother, my other sister, and her all got tested, and they ended up being a mix of each other kind of thing, right? Which ends up being like Eastern European for my dad, and Northern, and then my mother was more like Southern and Southern European and what's called Iberian, right?
Okay.
Which is like France, which you would expect like France, Spain for a French Canadian woman, right?
Sure, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So my sister was on my case by like 2019, like in the summer, fall. She's on my case, like, how come you didn't get your DNA test? Well, I just didn't want to spend the money. I was like, what's the point? You all got tested. Now, again, I knew the timeline, but I didn't know anything else. So my sister sends me the test for Christmas.
Aha. She is really gonna push this situation.
Yeah. And she didn't know any of this either. So
wow. So she's determined.
Right. So I flubbed the test, because my first tip for any new person doing this is don't have lunch and then take your DNA test.
Right.
So that was a wash. By the time I got my results, it was actually March 15th, 2020, which is the start of my new calendar.
Right. The Ides of March.
Yeah, it was a Sunday, and I was looking at my results around noon.
Oh, wow. Isn't it funny how those things become so cemented in your mind?
Yeah. So I open up the results, and the first thing I see, like the first thing, because I went like I think hardly anybody goes to the DNA matches. They don't even know what that is.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
go
that's
to
common.
I go to the what do they call it? The ethnicity,
Hmm.
right? 50% Ashkenazi Jewish.
Oh. Oh no, that doesn't make sense because your father already did it and you guys are not Jewish.
Yeah. So my mind starts spinning like, could this have like skipped a generation? Like, is that possible?
Totally.
Like recessive something,
Yeah, recessive ethnicity. Totally.
Uh, so then like, and I'm running back and forth to my wife as all this is going on. And the next thing I see, like probably half an hour later, is my dad's missing. And this cousin that I mentioned from way back in 1964, she had popped up on my heritage. My dad didn't see her message.
Hmm.
So eventually she got in touch with my family. Um, and we got together in October of 2019 before I got my DNA test. And all this stuff was discussed about where she came from and who her birth father was. And my dad's telling stories. And somehow none of this related to me at all.
Right, like none of it triggered the idea that maybe there was things to talk to you about. It
Right.
was all,
We were
yeah.
we were we were all together, all in
Hmm.
person down in New Jersey, and none of this came up
Hmm.
until like months later. So
I'm not surprised only because I've heard so many of these stories and have my own story that like denial is so wildly powerful. In it doesn't I totally wouldn't be surprised if they all were like, nope, never thought about you. I never thought about your story. Just so focused on that cousin. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that was so basically like, yeah, we kind of settled the case with my cousin in October 2019, and in March 2020, 2020,
Hmm.
the week of the lockdown in a lot of places, including
Sure.
here in New York, um, I got my news, right? So the first thing I say is, "Oh my God, I really am Jewish," and then the next thing I say is, "Where's my dad's side of the family, and who are all these Jewish people?"
Yeah.
So I'm like flipping out, and then I'm starting to see what the numbers mean. Like, what does it mean when your siblings only match you 25%?
Mm.
And what I see right next to it is half sister, niece, aunt, right?
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
like half sister. Okay. Um, so I processed that for a couple hours, and then like I shared with you before, I started putting together data about what made sense and what didn't make sense, because it's always got to be a mistake.
Hmm.
But it was all wrong in like a very specific way. So then I got in touch with my sister who ordered the test, and I said, "Hey, there's something up here, you know."
Hmm.
Um, so she's kind of like freaking out, and within a couple days she had ordered an ancestry kit for both of us, just so we could double check it, because this had come from my heritage. So now we were going to try ancestry, because of course that's got to be correct, you
Right.
know.
It could be the tests. You totally yeah. You never know.
It's never the test.
Hmm.
Dan,
I know it's never the test, but you might as
Dan,
well. You might
yeah,
as well get a second opinion.
Danny Shapiro said it in Inheritance. It's never the test.
Hmm. It's never the test.
Um, yeah. So let me see my timeline. Yeah. So probably the next big thing that happened was right around the time that I got my ancestry kit. It also occurred to me that if I can export my data from my heritage, I could probably import it elsewhere and get DNA matches without all this waiting. Because
Hmm.
it seemed like everything I did, it was like wait weeks,
Yeah.
in
Yep.
the middle of the lockdown when you can't go anywhere and you're going to go
Hmm.
crazy.
Totally. Like we might have this really life-altering information for you, but we need you to just sit tight for a long time.
Yeah, and in deference to Ancestry, they really processed my test really fast.
Oh, okay.
So I got lucky there. But in the meantime, I discovered this thing called GED Match.
Mm-hmm.
And on GED Match, you can meet up with people from various testing services, right? So I uploaded my data there in April, just about a month after my first test result. So what happened was, oh, wait. Well, let me back up to my heritage for a minute because I missed
Mm-hmm.
something important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The day after I received my results, I got a message on my heritage from a second cousin.
Oh.
Okay, he uses an alias on all his accounts. I know this now. So it wasn't his real name.
Uh-huh.
And he said, my mother wants to know how we're related. Because his mother allegedly was on my heritage, but I still got to get back to him because his mother's data and his data are the same. I think he uploaded
Oh.
his kit twice, and it really confused me.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Because
Okay.
I'm not related to his mother. I'm related to his father.
Oh. Well, no wonder she's confused. Okay.
Yeah, his father is deceased, but I'm related to his father's side.
All
So
right.
but he sends me a message and he says, my mother wants to know how we're related. I said, I have no idea. And in the beginning, I was really, it wasn't that I was embarrassed, but I was kind of like really upset, and I didn't want to necessarily tell them, hey, my parents screwed up,
So you had started to figure it out, but didn't want to
Yeah,
talk
yes.
about
I
it with
was
a
like,
stranger. Yeah.
I said, yeah, it seems like my father maybe isn't who I thought he was, and he's related to you somehow. And I didn't want to let go of this key piece of information that my mother's from Montreal and so am I.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, yeah, if he met her like down in New Jersey, like maybe she had an accent. I mean, this is the kind of ridiculous clues I was
Mm-hmm.
giving,
Right.
and
Right.
it was not like that at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he was confused. I was confused. He had just had a baby, as it turned out, so they were kind of like going crazy a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't get anywhere in March and April. But when I got to GED Match, there he was again, and this time I had his email address.
Aha.
And I could see part of his like first initial last name kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh well, this is interesting. So I sent him emails from that point on, and it didn't really help. But I also found on GED Match near the top of my list this woman who had put up 6 DNA kits that matched me in some way, and
Oh.
the top one was another like second, third cousin.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So I said, after I figured out her email address was like all over the place, I was like, maybe I should talk to her, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And concurrent to this, on Ancestry, I had messaged a third cousin who I also realized was popping up everywhere. So just because I recognized the name, I
Mm-hmm.
said, let me send her an email too and say, sorry, it took me like 3 tries to figure that out that we're related,
Yeah,
but
but
she was very,
active family with their uploading.
yeah, I got very fortunate with a
Mm-hmm.
couple of people. So with the third cousin, she was very nice, but as it turned out, her family tree didn't cover my part of the family. So we're good friends now, like
Uh-huh.
Facebook good friends. But she didn't really know where I came from.
Huh.
Now this other lady who her cousin happened to be the person I matched as my cousin. Okay, opposite sides of the family.
Right.
We're not related to each other, but we're both related to that cousin.
Right.
So, and this cousin is like close to her family, so I like hit the jackpot.
Yeah. Okay. So that would start to solve it. Question. Are your
Hmm.
are your parents alive while this is going on?
Yes.
Okay. But
Yeah,
you have not conferred with them at all about what's going on.
no, we're in April now, and I didn't talk to them, and it came out from them in like July.
Okay.
So
So yeah, okay. And your sister, but you're in touch with your sister, kind of keeping her updated on things?
yes, my one sister and then the other sister, like the sister who ordered the tests kind of dropped off, and the other one picked up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was giving the youngest sister like daily updates because I was totally flipping out.
And what do
And
you
oh,
think was going on with the original sister that was so interested in it? Freaked her out, you think?
yeah, she didn't quite know at that point. Like she wasn't expecting to have a big surprise. She was just
Right.
hoping we were Jewish.
Right. I mean, tale as old as time at this point, right? Like, famous last words. Did not expect a big surprise. Okay.
Yeah. So GED match, I find this lady, I sent her an email. Oh crap, I'm already getting choked up.
Mm.
In Inheritance, when Danny Shapiro got her big surprise, she texted a friend that was like a casual friend. And she said, can you help me out with this? Because she knew this friend was a genealogy freak, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this lady from anybody. And she called me back the same day. So, and obviously I've been in touch with her ever since. So yeah, she's a good friend now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so she got on the case and
Fred, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. What
yeah.
is what chokes you up about that? Is what makes you emotional? Is it that somebody just out of the kindness of their heart reached out to you, not knowing who you were,
Yeah,
but
because it
said
had
like,
been
mhm,
like not even a month. It had been almost
mhm,
a month, but I'd spent a month like just wondering, and especially after talking to my third cousin, who offered her family tree, but it wasn't like I had no idea where to look, right?
mhm, mhm,
And ditto with this lady, like her tree actually covers my part of the family because of her cousin.
right,
So she's got like 2,400 people or something on there, right?
right,
So it's nice to know I'm in there somewhere, but we
sure,
still didn't quite know where. So she called
right.
me.
She was so
She
willing to help immediately.
yeah, and
Hmm.
she said, well, let me see what I can find out. She actually had a family story that she thought was kind of relevant from a cousin. Um, and again, like he had lived in the New York area, so maybe he was involved somehow. She didn't know. So she went off with that, and she started connecting me with people. She connected me with one woman who was an NP herself, who is a semi-retired therapist now. She's a little older than me. Um, and she told me exactly this. She said, you're going to feel like you just found out you were adopted.
Hmm.
And that's pretty accurate, actually, to what my parents told me when they told me, well, your dad adopted you when you were born. That's what we did. Um, so that's one person she introduced to me. Another one is like the husband of a cousin who is he studied genetics in college.
Hmm.
So that was very helpful. So we had our little dream team together. And the next thing, within a few weeks, my DNA research angel, as we call them, right? And I call her that ever since I learned that term.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, yeah, that's you. Um, she offered to contact my second cousin, who was like, we were making no progress via email because, by the way, he hates email.
Oh,
He's like, I get tired of typing. I'd rather talk on the phone. I should have just offered him my phone number, you
right.
know?
Should have communication. Okay.
It's like he was hesitant about me. I was hesitant about him. So she said, look, why don't I contact him? Because she's done this stuff now for a while. She has her own story of discovering her family in a crazy way. And so she's kind of used to this.
Hmm.
So I'm like, fine, contact him, whatever. You can do the Jew thing, like whatever mind meld you guys have. I don't know. So so she did that, and they went off and were like psh, 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 for like a couple weeks, right? And I'm getting a little jealous, like, oh, it's great that you guys are such good friends,
Hmm.
you know. But then they came back and they said, look, we figured out something very interesting in his uh, grandfather's death certificate. As crazy as that sounds, there's a
Hmm.
connection to your other cousins, right, on the other side of the family in that paperwork. And I looked at that specific couple who are my great grandparents on my angel's family tree, and like the room started spinning, you
Huh.
know? Yeah, because you just like trying to connect all these different people who are related to me all as second and third cousins, and I'm
Hmm.
like, I don't know where I fit.
Right. Right.
So that was the first clue. then the genetics guy, right? All these people are way smarter than me, by the way. I try to do okay, but these guys are smart. So he says you should get a Y-DNA test. Are you familiar
Oh,
with
right.
those?
Yes, yes. Like the Y haplogen or something.
Yeah, the
The
haplogroup.
haplogroup. Yeah.
So just for the rest of us, what we talk about with DNA tests most of the time is autosomal DNA, and they take a large, portion of your DNA and they compare it to other people's, just to find out like who your relatives are. But the Y-DNA is specific to a portion of the DNA that gets passed from father to father, going all the way back through time.
Right.
So and here's another recommendation, if you can get like the oldest men in your family tested, that's probably the best thing you can do to match up with other relatives through this test.
Noted.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I ended up ordering a Y-DNA test, and this was probably June by then, from Family Tree DNA. So now I'm getting listed on a third company. And what happened was by the time I got the results of that, I had actually matched with a guy as like a second cousin on Family Tree, but I couldn't tell him apart from any other second cousins, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But his father matched me on Y-DNA. So that means I'm directly related to his, parents, grandparents kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that zeroed in on basically my family surname.
Right. 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 Right.
So now I know I belong to this family surname. That narrows down my search angels tree quite a bit,
Quite a bit, I bet. Yeah.
right? So now who's related to her cousin, my cousin, and these other people with that last name? Well, there's a group of those people who live in Montreal.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. So I apologize to my cousin for not having said this much sooner. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I've known them my whole life." Um, and there was more that
Mm-hmm.
happened, right? So this was like May to June's revelation, right? And in the background, apparently what was happening was one of my first cousins was getting a DNA test from 23andMe. Now, I wasn't on 23andMe,
Mm-hmm.
and I made a point of not doing it afterwards for a while. But she accepted the offer to put her data on GED Match when she got her
Uh-huh.
results in mid June.
Okay.
So 3 months in, um, she put her results up on GED Match, and we were introduced by email, right? Like my second cousin is introducing us, like, "Hey, here's so and so. I'm not sure exactly how you're related, but I wanted you to meet." And he kind of knew. So
Mm-hmm. Right.
so like the next day, it pops up on GED Match as a first cousin,
Mm-hmm.
and we who do this now kind of know that's like the end game, because your first cousin is related to your aunts and uncles and your birth parent.
Your parent. Yeah.
So she has two uncles. They both lived in Montreal at the time. They're both a little older than my mom. One is like 6 years and the other one's like 10 years. The 10-year older one was married with two kids and one on the way. The
At the
younger
time
one,
of your conception.
yes.
Okay.
And the younger one was single. And everybody talks about how charming he was,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Now I can't assume, and we still don't know. So,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's the unfortunate part. You're not going to get an ending on this one, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that part of it.
Well, like sure, that's unfortunately we don't have an ending, but but realistically, this is what happens is that a lot of people don't get an answer. So it's actually great to have you representing the population of people who are left with questions.
Yes. So what has happened since then is that cousin and I got to know each other a little more. She was very, very kind enough to like call me on the phone and tell me some stuff about the family. And she's like, "Well, um, you know, it's not exactly like a traditional relationship, but you are related to us. It's kind of like one of those things. And it's not like she's ready to introduce me to everyone. She still has not. But
Hmm.
we're on friendly terms after some rough spots. Um, but like I said right off the bat, she was kind enough to share her DNA, and she's the one who recommended that I read Inheritance, which, if you know, early on, one of the big clues was the unknown first cousin,
Right.
and literally that's what she was for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Um,
parallels for people, especially with that book, are so comforting.
yeah, well, like, and I identify with Danny saying she lost half of her Jewish heritage, and I
Mm-hmm.
picked one up.
Right. So what does that mean?
Yeah, well, I could talk about that, but
Mm-hmm.
um, so what happened after that was, we kind of went into like the summer, and people got busy, but in the background we're talking about, like, do we contact this guy who was single at the time? Um, and by the way, he's developed a big interest in genealogy over the years. Like, he was like the pen and paper kind of, like, picked up the computer later on.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a lot of family records, and he would probably be really into this. So we discussed that for a few months. Nothing ever came of it. And then in November, we made an attempt, and he hasn't responded. And
Ah.
in like on New Year's Day, actually, my search angel said, let's give it another shot on New Year's Day. I'm like, I don't think it matters what day of the week it is, because by then I was in the NPE groups and I kind of knew how these responses go.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, sure, we'll give it a shot. And I made a video for New Year's Day, and we sent it to him. And that didn't do any good, like a 5-7 minute video. I'm like, hey, this is me. I remember way back when I was a kid, I made a family tree with my grandmother, and then I never gave it a second thought until now. It was this kind of stuff, trying to like pull the heartstrings a little bit.
Right. So this man might be your biological father and he might be your uncle.
Correct. And
Correct. Okay. But
he could be silent for either reason.
right. Totally. I mean, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I've gone through the gamut of emotions of being sympathetic with people, and realizing I'm just like a Facebook message away from being a real nuisance and all this stuff,
Sure.
you know. But that's kind of where we're at. So
Mm-hmm.
I've made friends with a lot of second and third cousins from here to like Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's cool. And it seems like the closer you get to immediate family, the scarier it gets.
Right. Right. The more there is to disrupt.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess I could say, like, by December, I gave another attempt at getting into the NPE groups on Facebook. For some reason, when I tried earlier on, it didn't work. Like,
Oh.
somebody didn't respond to my request or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I got in December, and ever since then, like, I've been learning a lot and realizing, oh, it's nothing personal about me.
Right.
Some people's family dynamics are a lot more messed up, like the ones they know, the ones they don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been very helpful.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. The learning about what's personal and what's not personal is very helpful. I'm glad that's good for you.
Yeah, but so, like, it probably the last straw with my first cousin, was I did send in to 23andMe because they were having a special for the health and ancestry package.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured by December, like we had already discussed, that I fall into this DNA black hole in the family because they seem to mistrust the giving out their information.
Right.
Just my luck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I sent in and I got my results in December, and picked up another first cousin just by coincidence. She had already, like, it was a first cousin once removed, younger, right?
Okay.
So she had sent in and got her results like within a week of mine.
Hmm.
And my first cousin actually contacted me, and she said, just a heads up, my niece is on there now. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, don't worry about it, it's fine. And I got it in my head, like I got to contact them now, because I thought maybe I could start this promotional campaign,
Right. Yeah. It's interesting to like that all these people know about you, but everybody's protecting somebody else.
Yeah.
There's sort of a tangled web going on over there
Yes,
of
exactly.
secrets and I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little wacky.
It's
So
uncomfortable.
yeah, so because what I learned more recently from the NPE groups is we can have our privacy and not be a personal secret,
Right.
right? It doesn't mean we have to blab it to everybody, but we don't have to be we don't have to hide,
Right. Right.
So yeah, I tried being super friendly
Mm-hmm.
and like, oh, we're all related. Isn't that so cool? And I freaked them out so bad, everybody stopped talking to me.
Oh man.
Yeah. So we're kind of coming back around now, at least with my first cousin, but leave the kids alone and just kind of like hang out. And meanwhile, I didn't mention this, but it's sort of weird that my family and this extended family have kind of straddled Montreal and New York for my entire
Uh-huh.
life.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I live 35 miles away from a lot of cousins and possibly a half sibling.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because of the lockdown, I haven't met anybody, but I know I'm going to meet at least a few people who are nice to me
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Interesting. Yeah. But yeah, you've all been kind of like navigating the same region.
Yes. So I
Right.
mean, the good parts of this is like I get calls like maybe once a week from this one, second cousin who I first contacted, and once we were introduced face to face, then we started talking on WhatsApp and all this. We get along great.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. And he keeps asking me how I'm doing on my book.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So and I do have a lot of notes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Good.
so there's that, and then I've made other friends. Like the other part of this I didn't really talk about is the whole Jewish thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, my relationship to that was both like underwhelming and also kind of complicated, because my parents do like that kind of stuff. Like they have little Jewish decorations around the home. They sent me a calendar from like a Christian ministry, that's like all about Israel and stuff. So that's always kind of been in the background, but my mother
Mm-hmm.
had no idea.
Uh-huh.
She didn't know this guy at all, you know.
Right.
So that's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
But along the way, I've been learning about it, kind of like I said, I want to learn about this from Jewish people and kind of like from a non-religious perspective to start with. So that's what I've been doing. I've been learning history. I got hooked up with a couple friends who were like, "Hey, check out this service, this seminar, this thing on YouTube." So that's been kind of cool.
Yeah. Oh, good.
And my connection to the Holocaust now is much more significant,
Yeah, I can imagine.
because my family in Hungary in particular, we lost like 80 people.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm.
My part of the family was in France by then, and they were hidden. That was kind of like their story, but I mean, it was still scary. And you know, um, on my Facebook page recently, I put this very sort of vague news story about a person who was reunited with the family that hid them.
Mm-hmm.
Wink, wink.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and I translated it into English so everybody could read it.
Right. Okay. Noted.
Yes, and it's public, so he knows it's there if he wants to look.
Right. If he wants to look around, he knows that you know things.
Yes.
And when did you decide what made you, or when did you decide to talk to your parents about it?
Okay. Oh yes, I forgot to mention that part. So around July, my wife and I were talking about whether I should speak to my mother, and by then we still didn't know who knew what, and like, did my dad know anything? Did my mom know anything? So I said, I'm gonna just drop it, because it's gonna be like a blow up the family situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, but I got to go see my parents regardless. At least give her an opportunity if she wants to say something. So I did. and we went to visit my sister, which was like an hour away from my dad. um, and and we had been talking about the DNA test, and I'd been trying to like encode, like say, oh, I had a lot of fun putting together a family tree on my heritage. It's so cool. You just click, 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 right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she
Hint,
goes, look,
hint, hint.
yeah,
Yeah.
she goes, look, your father adopted you when you were born, and I didn't know the man, who got me pregnant. She said she didn't even know she was pregnant until she had a baby bump, and
Oh.
her friend said to her, you got to do something
Yeah.
about that. So yeah, that's kind of how it went down. I mean, and the revelation to me, like I've heard
Mm-hmm.
these things
Mm-hmm.
get very, very contentious. My mother was very matter of fact. She was a little teary.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she hadn't wanted to say anything because she felt sort of naive at the time, and she didn't want her kids to think any less of her.
Sure.
When we got home, how it went down with my father was she walked in, like my dad was in their bedroom, and she walked in. She's like, yeah, he knows. I told him about being adopted.
Oh.
That was it.
And what did he say?
He's like, okay, well then he was very nice about it, but it was
Mm-hmm.
all kind of matter of fact, right?
Right.
He said, look, my family life growing up wasn't great. I mean, the circumstances around my aunt's pregnancy kind of highlighted a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found out about your mother, I wanted her to have better than that for
Mm-hmm.
both of you. So the way it happened was she wrote him a letter. He was out of the country, and she wrote him a letter. So however long it took a letter to get there, right, like overseas,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he called her back.
Oh, yeah.
Long distance, when it was like this one connecting to that one connecting,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was something.
Huh. So she was honest with him about the situation from the beginning, that
Yes.
she was pregnant by somebody else.
Now he must have visited around that would have been like the summer of 1965.
Mm-hmm.
And he must have visited sometime around then, and I was premature. So there may have been some fudging with the numbers there. But
Mm-hmm.
he must have visited, or this would not have been believable.
Right.
But also clearly not his.
Right. 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 And he knew that, but
Yeah.
they did have a relationship
Yes.
at that time. So she wasn't just writing a
Yeah. Part of my
random dude. Mm-hmm.
yeah, part of my misunderstanding was I thought like they met, she got pregnant, and then when I found out it wasn't him, I'm like, they met, she met some other guy and got pregnant,
Right.
but there was like a 2-year gap in there.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he was basically visiting back and forth during that time period whenever he got leave,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I forgot to mention my parents' part in all this, where it all started.
Matter of fact.
So, but yeah, I mean, literally from that day on, they had told one of my uncles who later passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and they told this friend of ours for whatever
Right.
reason.
That family friend.
Yeah, I guess because they were passing off their son to somebody else, and they figured they need to know, like, oh, if he starts acting not like me, this is why. I don't know.
All the bad traits, those aren't mine. Right.
Well, what's funny is my dad was kind of like a football player in high school. More like a wide, stocky guy, right? I'm thin as a rail. I look like my mother, but I just
Mm-hmm.
figured I look like my mother,
Right.
But meanwhile, my sisters and my cousins all look alike in that part of the family.
Mm-hmm.
So they all have like the sandy blonde hair, and I have dark, like brownish hair,
Yeah.
brown eyes,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely not as obvious as some of the NPE pictures you see, but definitely noticeable.
Yep. I feel like, I mean, Danny Shapiro is an example of somebody that was blonde in a family of dark-haired people, in a family of dark-haired people, but I feel like it's more common for those of us that have the dark features in a blonde family. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
That's maybe just anecdotal from my podcasting, but I feel like more people have the dark features that stand out. I don't know why it's always that way, but
Well, I had a couple things like, obviously my dad's personality and mine were different. I figured, although the things that we had in common, like he kind of introduced me to like science fiction and reading long novels and stuff like that. Um, so we had some common interests, but like I was never good at sports. I kept to myself, most of the time. I'd be doing like whatever in my room. My sisters always played with each other, but I figured, oh, well, they're girls. Um, so there was some separation, but I think it was sort of like unconscious, and
sure.
it was never like you'd point back to it and go, aha. Now maybe if I start to meet my closer relatives, I'll see some aha moments there. I don't know. I
Right.
honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen some pictures and some home movies, which are kind of freaky and made me a little like my grandparents,
Hmm.
that I never met and who apparently visited Montreal around the same time I lived there.
Hmm.
So that's a lot, but they died like 20 years ago. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Um, I would think the next big step for me is when we finally get out of this pandemic, and I'm all pro-vaccine as they come. I'm going to get my vaccinations, and I'm going to go visit the people who want to see me.
I think that's a great idea.
And I may just move down to where my search angel lives and stay with her because she's got an empty nest. So her and her husband could just probably adopt me. And
There
that'd
we
be
go. Then they'd all have to face you because you'd be present
that's
in
it.
the
Well,
house.
she's kind of away from everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
She used to live here in New York, but now she's down in Virginia. And nobody else, as far as I know, I don't have any cousins down there. But I have a whole lot up here.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Who knows?
At
Who you're
least two or three of them want to see me, so that's good.
Yeah. I think that's what you do. I think you kind of go to where the love is. Like you go start with where it's positive and
Yeah,
lean into that and then see what happens.
yeah. I've been able to talk to like older cousins who gave me insights into how the family was back then. Before everybody kind of like split up and move away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really nice. But they're always also telling me like, don't contact so and so because he could have a heart attack.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of a downer.
Yeah.
Except now I know
No pressure.
now I know better. So
Right. No pressure. Their lives are in your hands.
it was a concern, but I seem to be the kind of person who just wants to reach out and find out.
Right. Right. Well, it's it is not fair to be made to feel like one's existence is a secret. Yeah, it's complicated, but it's not fair.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anything you wish you had known when this all started for you
Uh,
last March?
yeah, all the emotional stuff I was not expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd been through some of this stuff before because I had some changes to like my religious beliefs over the past 5 years. So I'd processed a lot of that, which is kind of emotional at times.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me into journaling, which was very useful. Um, so that all applied here. But then the Jewish thing kind of stirred things up a bit.
Sure.
So, and in a good way. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's bad. I'm just saying it complicates things.
Sure.
Um, and I'm more than willing to talk to anybody about it. Like the people in the Jewish Heritage and PE group, I love them. They're great. Um, so the other things, emotionally speaking, were like I heard the words, "You're going to feel like you were adopted," and then it took a while to take effect. I got very anxious. I was oversharing with people. This is my big recommendation. Like pick,
Uh-huh.
pick a few trusted friends and only talk to them
Right.
if at all possible. Because Danny Shapiro mentioned this too. Like she was at a party and she got a little tipsy
Yep.
and started telling everybody about her donor conceived father.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah,
I was at a wedding and I was like, well, how am I? Well, let me tell you. Yeah.
yeah. I'm sorry for all of you guys. I really am. I mean, the only connection I have to that is I don't know the guy either.
Right. Right.
But I did overshare with like 30 people
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I went back at a certain point. Like I had a disagreement with a friend who said, look, you've got to stop acting like this is your story. It's other people's story too.
Hmm.
And you'll notice I haven't mentioned anybody's name,
I did notice. I
right?
100% have noticed. Yeah.
Because that was a big screw up on my part. I started naming names and it was wrong. Don't
Hmm.
do it.
Hmm.
Um, you're going to feel angry. You're going to feel like, nobody loves you and it's you against the world, but there are other people involved. So I think I've learned the lesson. Granted, you're the first podcast I've talked to about it.
Yeah. Now it's public. Okay. Mm-hmm.
But this is also a very specialized topic.
Yeah.
I also talked about my religious issues on a
Mm-hmm.
podcast.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you're interested in that topic, but I'll say the same thing here. Like if you know me in person and you happen to cross this and I mentioned you especially, then yeah, talk to me about it. Sure.
Right. 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 But you are
But
not.
otherwise, I'm just a cautionary tale.
Hmm.
Because yeah, my search angel in particular has been picking up the pieces of a lot of this, and she's, even though it was her friend who's
Mhm.
the NPE advocate, right? Uh, she didn't tell me any of this.
Right.
She didn't act like, hey, you're going to regress to like your teenage years and start acting out and just yell at anybody you can about what your parents did in the 1960s,
Right. 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 Yeah. You'll have so many things sort of flood you, overwhelm you. So many feelings and experiences and thoughts and like mental processes.
Yep.
Yeah. Nobody warns you about that.
And the corollary to that is join NPE support group as soon
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah. 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 Get to those. For sure. Yeah. The power of community is huge within
Yeah,
this group. Yeah.
because I find that I can vent a little more safely, and I can also see other people talking exactly like me, and I'm like, oh, good, I'm not crazy. It's not just me.
Totally. Totally. Totally.
Um, what I'd seen previously is I found like after you go on all the DNA websites, you start seeing all the ads on Facebook, like
Mhm.
the My Heritage girl doing the fist pump in front of her phone, which I hate. Like,
Right.
okay, maybe you were happy,
Totally.
And granted, all this stuff has been very exciting,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't doing a fist pump.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. No, the whole marketing campaign for all the ancestry, all the ancestry DNA genetic stuff is all about the excitement of connection, and they never explore the surprises or the devastation or the confusion or the complexity or the questions. They don't.
yeah.
There's even a there was one commercial, and I don't know if it even lasted, but there was one, and it was for Ancestry, I think, where there's a birthday party happening with a family for an older man, and
Oh,
like it's his 80th birthday or something like that, and
yeah.
the doorbell rings, and they open the door, and there's another young man standing there, and then they accept him, and I don't know. It just people were really upset about that one, about the like that you would even do that, you would go surprise a family like that, or that the family there's so
Yeah, that does seem rather unlikely, and they
yeah.
should know better.
Yeah, right?
The marketing people didn't, but the people at Ancestry should.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Uh,
maybe that commercial didn't last, but I remember that the groups were sort of upset by that one.
yeah. Oh, little sidebar. There was a Hanukkah themed movie this past Christmas time on the Hallmark Channel.
Mhm.
Of all times, right? This was the year that they had the woman find out through a DNA test that she had Jewish relatives.
Oh, that's the plot?
Yes. So I sat there and I watched this movie and I was like, yeah, if it only could be like that.
Right. If it only could be like a Hallmark movie, if life in general could be like a Hallmark movie.
Because all those movies, it's like you have the initial event, and then there's some confusion, and then they have a little disagreement, but in the end, everybody's happy.
Everybody's happy in the end. Or
Yeah.
in love or happy to move forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's called Lights, Love Lights Hanukkah or something like that.
Okay. Okay, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Well, Fred, thank you so much for your time. I just
Oh,
said your
well,
name.
thank
I
you.
just said your name out loud on the podcast. Is that
That's
okay?
cool.
I
Oh,
didn't say your last name. Okay.
yes, it's fine. I joke that my name is like the name that people pull out when they're making up a name. So
It's
it's
memorable.
okay. Have fun with that.
Yeah. Yep. It was definitely easy to like remember when it came to emails and stuff. So this is so great. You're right. Your story is absolutely going to help people. I love that you shared it. I think it's so important to also talk about stories that don't have a resolution yet.
Yes. And the other thing I would say too is like, honestly, like my parents kept it to themselves. As far as I know, not too many people knew.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person didn't know either because there was no connection. It was the 1960s. There was
Yeah.
no way to get back to him, as far as I know to this point.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going with that. So it was like no harm, no foul. And my
Right.
my parents tried to do the right thing. Back then, it was like, well, if we don't tell him, it won't hurt his feelings.
Totally. I mean, parents are still doing that today.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
which I guess is partly why we're all trying to talk about it. And say, try to get this information out there and be like, don't do that, don't do that. But it's still, you know, it's still an intention that people uh go with today. So I have a funny, not it's not funny, but an interesting fact, and
Mhm.
then followed by a question. I am talking with Danny Shapiro after this.
Oh, yes, you told me.
So what can I tell her for you? Do you have a message to pass on or a question to ask her or both?
Well, you could tell her, hey, I'm the guy who sent you those Twitter messages about
Mm-hmm.
finding out I'm half Jewish.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I appreciated her getting back to me too. And no, her book, I mean, I read her book, then I went back and took notes on the book, then I
Mm-hmm.
listened to the audio book, and you could definitely tell her about my first cousin also.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
that would be
that
neat.
recommended it to her. Okay. I mean to
Yes.
you.
Tell her that we almost broke up, but we're back together.
Okay. Okay. I will. I'll let her know. I'll let her know that it's been um not a smooth ride, but
No, definitely still not.
yeah, but
And I'm still looking for tips on how to like an introduction to Judaism for
mhm.
someone from the other side of that coin.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put that out there. I'll ask her and then we'll see what else comes up.
Yeah, because I was a lifelong religious person, so and I went to Bible college, so I got that part covered.
Right, right, right. You understand that side of things,
Yep.
but
I know she was
right. So to
having fun with a
understand,
Christmas tree.
right. So to have that side of you, to have a side of you be a 50% of a religion that is also a culture that is also a bloodline is
Exactly.
more complicated than arguably more complicated than Christianity,
Yeah, she
which
actually in her
she
book, she kind of like said, I didn't think of myself as having descended from Christians. And I'm like, no, that's not how that works.
right, right. Yeah. Um, yeah, that is part of the beauty and the complexity of Judaism, right? Is that it's like a race and an ethnicity and a religion and a culture. So
Yeah.
so to find out that that's 50% of you, I can see why, especially and not knowing your the story about you and religion, but knowing that you've already gone through something where you've processed a lot of that stuff, I can totally see why that would trigger a lot of thoughts and feelings.
Yes, but it's all positive, and I'm taking it all in as I can.
Great. Good.
Yep.
Great. Well, Fred, let's go on with our Saturdays. Thank you so much for giving me the middle of your day.
Thank you very much. And I'll now say what my new friends say, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I will thank you for everything. And I'll be in touch with you, of course. And this was just so great. I'm so glad we got to get together so quickly.
Yes, I'm very happy. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great. And what is your podcast? Plug it real quick.
Oh, yes. We've actually finished it for the most part,
But
but
you can
fans.
still listen to it, right?
Yes. Oh, it's still there. And it's called Psych Rewind, Psych. It's about the television show Psych that was on USA Network, now available on Peacock.
Mm-hmm.
And I can give you the link for the show notes if you want, because I don't want to get it wrong off the top of my head. But
Yeah,
it
give it
goes
to me.
to my friend Stephanie's podcast network. So definitely listen to her stuff and support her for sure.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure that all that's posted so anybody interested can head over there.
Okay.
All right, Fred, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will talk to you soon.
All right, great.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So, hey, thank you again to Fred for spending so much time with me. I had a really great time. I hope you can, I hope you all just enjoyed spending the morning with us as much as I did. But But are you listening right now? And do you know some resources that Fred could find about learning about Judaism? Within the NPE community, there is quite a lot of people who find out they are a different ethnicity, race, culture, and a lot of people find out they are Jewish, at least half Jewish. And I am hoping to have an episode or more that focuses on that aspect specifically. So stay tuned or contact me if you want to be a part of that. But in the meantime, what shall my newly Jewish friends do or read or listen or pursue to understand more about this discovery in their heritage? Do you have suggestions? Can you please email me them so I can forward them along? My email is eve@everythingsrelativepodcast.com. Or comment on my Instagram, same handle, @everythingsrelativepodcast. And of course, stick around for my episode with Danny Shapiro. Is it next week? I don't know. It's up to Campfire Media, who organize these files now. It's all out of my control. Keep telling your truth. See you next time. I'm Eve Sturgis. This is Everything's Relative Podcast. Bye.
Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis is produced by Kaylin Egan and Eve Sturgis. Eve is a licensed therapist in the state of California, but conversations on this podcast are not therapy sessions. This podcast is edited by Stephanie DeLon-Zick, the logo design is by Ivy McNally, and the music is used with permission by Goodbye the Band.
My name is Will Himes, and I am a ghostwriter, meaning I write other people's books for them. And I have a podcast called I Will Write Your Book, which are recordings of my meetings with my eccentric clients, such as a woman blocked after one sentence of a children's book about her dogs, a romance novelist who dislikes sex, and a man proud of having sampled everything in his local grocery store. This podcast has been described as fully improvised, played by some of the best comedians on the planet Earth. Hey, that's pretty good. That's I Will Write Your Book on Campfire Media.
Campfire.